How you guys doing? I'm sorry I can't be here again today, but I know that you guys can get through the lesson. Remember, at any time throughout the lesson, if you need a pause, please press pause. So the first thing I'm going to do on this YouTube lesson is go over the homework. The next thing you're going to do is we're going to go through the lesson. We do have a new lesson today. And if your substitute teacher hasn't done it already, your substitute teacher should be passing out the paper notes for today. If she hasn't, or he hasn't, what I want you guys to do is to please ask the substitute teacher to please give you guys the paper notes for today. They should be located in the blue folder on my table on the front of the room. Again, we're going to go over the homework, do this YouTube lesson, and then after that, you will then start on the homework for tonight. So let's get going on this right now. So last night's homework, or this past weekend's homework, the homework from Friday was page 419 to 420, numbers 3 to 39, multiples of 3. You had 13 problems to do for homework. So let's get going with the very first problem. If you feel at any time that you guys need to speed along because you understood the homework, go ahead and speed along. If you had a lot of questions on the homework, you may want to pay attention to all the problems because I will be going over all the problems on the homework. So again, if you guys understood the homework, you could indeed skip along to the lesson itself. So the lesson on Friday was the substitution method. And what we're going to be doing, number 3, is try to solve this by substituting 3b into a. So I'm going to put 3b into a. Therefore, I get 3b minus b equals 12. I'm going to simplify that to get 2b equals 12. I'm going to divide now both sides by 2. I get b equals 6. That's not my final answer because I still want to figure out what a is. So I'm going to put it back into the top equation. I can either put it into the top or the bottom, but I believe just by looking at it, the top equation is easier to plug in. So I put 6 into b in the top equation, and I get a equals 18. The answer for this is 18 comma 6. The way you write it in parentheses is alphabetical order. A and then B, 18 and 6. For number 6, I'm going to do something very similar. I want to substitute in 3d minus 4 into c. I then get this. I then want to simplify this by adding like terms. And I get 4d minus 4 equals 16. I then add 4 to both sides. I get 4d equals 20. I divide both sides by 4. I then get d equals 5. It's not my final answer. Like I did before, I want to substitute into the top equation because it's the easiest equation to plug it into. I then get c equals to 11. So my final answer in parentheses or coordinate form is 11 comma 5. For number 9, what I have to do for number 9 is I have to get a variable by itself. And the easiest variable to get by itself is f in the bottom equation. So I'm going to transform it so it becomes f equals negative 4h plus 19. And then we'll plug in negative 4h plus 19 into the top equation. And then we'll get 4 times negative 4h plus 19 minus 3h equals 0. I'll then do the distributive property. I then get negative 16h plus 76 minus 3h equals 0. I add like terms. I then get negative 19h plus 76 equals 0. And then it subtracts 76 from both sides. The last step that I'll do for this part is divide everything by negative 19 to get 4. I then plug in 4 to the easier equation, which I believe is the bottom one. I then get f is equal to 3. So my answer at the end is 3, 4 in alphabetical order. For number 12, very similar to what I've done before. I want to get a variable by itself. So I'm going to choose to get x by itself on the top equation here. So I get x equals 3y plus 9. I've skipped a couple of steps here, but I believe you guys can figure that out. I will then substitute in 3y plus 9 into x in the bottom equation. I will then do distributive property. Add like terms. Subtract both sides by 45. Then get y by itself by dividing both sides by 17. So y is equal to negative 2. I then plug in negative 2 to the top equation. I get x is equal to 3. In coordinate form, the answer will then be 3, negative 2. Number 15. For this particular problem, I actually want to substitute in immediately a equals 3/5 b in the top equation. Therefore, I get 2 times 3/5 b minus b equals 1. I try to simplify the fraction part to get 6/5 b minus b equals 1. I don't like fractions, so I'm going to multiply everything by 5. I then get 6b minus 5b equals 5 if I multiply everything by 5. This then simplifies to b equals 5. I will then plug it in to the bottom equation. I will then get a equals 3. And my final answer is 3, 5. For number 18, like I've done before, I want to get a variable by itself. But number 18 is kind of complicated, especially with the fraction. So I'm going to multiply the whole top equation by 2. And therefore I get y minus 2x equals 2. I will then substitute in, I will then get y by itself for the top equation. And then I get y equals 2x plus 2. I will then substitute in 2x plus 2 into y to the bottom equation. And therefore I get x plus 2x plus 2 plus 7 equals 0. I then simplify the left-hand side. Subtract both sides by 9. Then divide both sides by 3 to get x equals negative 3. I then plug this back in to y equals 2x plus 2. Again, y equals negative 4. Final answer is negative 3, negative 4. (24) is kind of tricky. You have to do several steps for number 24. For number 24, I'm going to get rid of the fractions in both the top and bottom equation. So I'm going to multiply the top equation by 10 because that's the lowest common multiple. In the bottom equation, I'm going to multiply everything by 15. You have to be very careful with this, guys. Remember, and I multiply everything by the lowest common multiple. And therefore, I get 5c minus 2d equals negative 40 for the top equation. For the bottom equation, I get 10c minus 9d equals negative 105. I then want to get d by itself, or c by itself on the top equation. So I got c by itself on the top equation. So I got c equals 2/5 d minus 8. I skipped some steps there, but all I did was try to get c by itself on the top equation. I then substitute in 2/5 d minus 8 into the bottom equation for where c should be. I plug that in. And I get 10 times 2/5 d minus 8 minus 9d equals negative 105. If I do the distributive property correctly, I then get I then get 4d minus 80 minus 90 equals negative 105. If I simplify that, I get negative 5d minus 80 equals negative 105. Add 80 to both sides. Lastly, divide both sides by negative 5 to get d equals 5. So I'm finished with this part, but I still have to figure out what c is. So I plug that into there. 2/5 times 5 minus 8 will eventually get you negative 6. The final answer is negative 6, 5. For number 27, what I try to do is I multiplied 2 to get rid of the fraction to everything in the top. So I get x plus y equals 20. I will then try to get a variable by itself. I got y by itself by subtracting x from both sides. The next step that I would do is substitute in negative x plus 20 into y. So I get 2x equals 3 times negative x plus 20. I then do the distributive property, add 3x to both sides, then divide both sides by 5 to get x equals 12. Like I've done before, plug it back into the top equation. Negative 12 plus 20 equals to 8. So my final answer is 12, 8. For number 30, this is a very complicated problem. What I'm going to do for number 30 is try to get rid of the fraction. So for the top equation, I'm going to multiply everything by 2. For the bottom equation, I'm going to multiply everything by 3. As a result, I get that. Notice what I do about the top equation. Y plus 2 is in parentheses. And notice what's in front of the parentheses, that minus sign. That's very, very important. And if you try to do this, I'm assuming that a lot of you guys made a mistake at that point. I then want to simplify this by doing the distributive property of the negative on the top equation. So I get 4x minus y minus 2 equals 44. And 9x plus y plus 2 equals 21. I then try to get x and y by itself on the left-hand side. So I get 4x minus y equals 46. 9x plus y equals to 19. I then try to get a variable by itself. I choose to get y by itself in the bottom equation by subtracting 9x from both sides. I then plug in that into y. Remember, when you plug it back in, put it in parentheses, like I did right now. That's critical because of that minus sign in front of the y. So I simplify this to get that, because I distribute my negative. This then becomes 13x minus 19 equals 46. I add 19 to both sides. Divide both sides by 13. So x equals 5. It's a lot of work here, guys. Plug it back into x in the bottom equation. Y equals negative 26. So my answer at the end becomes 5 comma negative 26. Number 33 is a complicated problem. There's several ways you could do number 33, but I believe the easiest way to do 33 is try to get x by itself in top equation. So x equals to 7y, and I really didn't touch the bottom equation yet. I got the variable x by itself on the top equation equals to 7y. What I'll do now is plug in 7y into both parts of the bottom equation. As a result, I then get 7y minus y over 3 equals to 7y plus y over 4. And then simplify it to get 6y over 3 equals 8y over 4. So how do I solve this? Well, you guys have learned how to do this before. It's a proportion, cross multiply. And therefore I get 24y equals 24y. So when we get the same thing on both sides of the equal sign, what do we say? We can either say all real solutions or infinitely many solutions. And some examples that you could put in to x and y are 0, 0, 1, 7, 2, 14, so on and so forth. For number 36, you would have to graph it. So in order to graph it, guys, what you have to do is try to get y by itself on the left-hand side and make it into slope-intercept form. For the top equation becomes that. To get y by itself on the bottom equation, you'll multiply everything by 2, and you get the same equation. So as a result, aren't they basically the same line? So what would your answer be for this? Infinitely many solutions. So if you did it the other way, if you actually solved it by substitution, you would get y by itself. So you'll get y. I multiply the bottom equation by 2 to get y equals negative 4x plus 20. Substitute that into y. Simplify that. And then get 20 equals 20, which again gets you infinitely many solutions, or all real numbers. For 39, a lot of people get intimidated by 39 just because you have 3 equations instead of just 2. But the way you solve number 39 is just like what we did before. You want to do substitution. It's pretty basic. So the first thing I did is plug in 3x into y, because y equals to 3x. And for the bottom equation, z equals to 5x, I'm going to plug in that 5x into z. If I plug it in, I then get this. X plus 3x plus 5x equals 180. I then simplify that to get 9x equals 180. Divide both sides by 9. So I get x equals to 20. I'm not done yet, guys. I still have to find y and z. So I'm going to plug in 20 into y equals 3x. As a result, I get y equals to 60. I will again then plug in x equals 20 into z equals to 5x. And I get z equals to 100. And the way you would write that is in alphabetical order in parentheses, but with three things: 20, comma, 60, comma, 100. And that's your answer for number 39.